Hi there, I'm Fiona. At my sister's wedding, I wasn't standing beside her as a bridesmaid. I wasn't even seated among the guests. I was out front, managing the parking. Yeah, that was my place, handing out valet slips while strangers raised glasses to a future I wasn't allowed to witness. But that wasn't even the part that hurt the most. What shattered something inside me was the realization that they hadn't simply overlooked me, they had removed me. From the photos, from the live stream, from the family itself. And when I finally chose to walk away, what followed, let's just say it wasn't something they were ready for. Why would a mother hand her own daughter a waiver just to keep her quiet? Why would a bride secretly arrange a divorce before even saying I do? And what would you do if it was your own family? The sun hit my windshield like it had something against me. I pulled into the gravel loop of the estate, the tires crunching beneath me like dry bones snapping under pressure. Charleston in late spring could be breathtaking, magnolias blooming everywhere, a faint trace of salt drifting through the air. But today, it didn't feel beautiful. It felt staged, like everything around me was part of some quiet setup. I parked off to the side, near the back service entrance, not where guests were meant to park. No, this space was clearly reserved for staff. Vehicles lined up in neat rows like they had been trained to stand there. SUVs, pickup trucks, even a catering van with its logo peeling off at the edges. I turned off the engine, stared at the grand colonial building in front of me, and took a slow breath. 2 weeks earlier, Clarice, my mother, had called. No greeting, no warmth, just straight to the point. We're short-staffed for the wedding. You're organized. You can handle the parking lot, right? There was no mention of me being her daughter. No invitation, no RSVP, just a task. And still, I said yes. I told myself it was about helping, being useful. But somewhere deeper, there was a quieter truth. I thought maybe if I showed up, I'd be seen. When I checked in, the first thing they handed me was a lanyard, a laminated badge clipped to it. Fiona. Just that. No last name, no connection. Not sister of the bride, nothing. Just Fiona. Like I was another temporary worker they picked up last minute. Black on black, the coordinator said, handing me a staff shirt sealed in plastic. We're aiming for a cohesive look. Clarice's voice echoed in my mind. Brand consistency matters. It's not personal. I changed in the staff restroom. The uniform clung tightly to my shoulders, stiff polyester that smelled like starch and someone else's perfume. I folded my own clothes carefully, placing them into a garment bag like they still belonged to someone else. Standing there, I didn't feel like myself anymore. I felt invisible, like background noise no one noticed unless it disappeared. Guests began arriving just before noon. BMWs and Teslas rolled in, shining under the sunlight like they were part of the decoration. Some drivers barely glanced at me. One woman waved me over, rolled down her window and said with a bright smile, "Is the valet bathroom around back too?" She laughed before I could answer and drove off, her window sliding shut. By the 5th luxury SUV, I stopped trying to smile. Every interaction chipped away at me, a quiet reminder. You don't belong here. You're here to serve now. I asked the event manager if I could help inside once the flow slowed. She didn't even lift her eyes from her clipboard. No, you're scheduled for outdoor duty only. Don't forget sunscreen. Inside, I knew what was happening. Photos, toasts, music. I could hear the faint sound of a string quartet carried by the wind, glasses clinking somewhere beyond those doors. Out here, I moved traffic cones with damp hands, my lower back beginning to ache. My ballet flats, never meant for gravel, were already scuffed and worn. A blister formed at my heel, building slowly with every step. It would burst before the first dance even began. A silver Lexus pulled up. The window lowered, and a familiar face leaned out. Mrs. Kellerman. She used to live down our street when I was younger. She squinted at me. "Fiona. Oh, I didn't realize you were working the wedding." The words hung heavy between us. "I'm just helping out," I said softly. "Family support." She gave a polite smile, the kind people offer when they don't know what to say but feel something is off. When the line of cars finally slowed, I stepped into a narrow patch of shade behind a pillar. I leaned against it, pretending to check my phone. I wasn't expecting anything, but I still hoped. A message lit up the screen. Mason. Still want me to come? I stared at it. I hadn't told him how bad things really were. He had offered to fly in just to be there for me. I told him not to. Said it wasn't necessary. Now I wasn't so sure. I didn't reply. I just looked toward the grand entrance. Music swelled from inside. Laughter followed. Cheers. None of it was for me. Then, from the corner of my eye, I noticed movement. Someone stepped out of the main hall, not a guest, not staff either. A camera hung from his neck. The videographer. He wasn't filming the crowd anymore. He was pointing the lens at me. I stayed still. Didn't react. Pretended I hadn't noticed. He moved casually, like he was just collecting candid shots. Guests spinning on the lawn, Deline twirling, her veil catching the golden light. Everything looked perfect. Timed. Controlled. Then the camera shifted slightly. Toward me. Out of reflex, I gave a small, polite smile. Nothing too much. Just enough. He hesitated, looked through the viewfinder, then lowered the camera awkwardly. "Sorry," he said. Avoiding my eyes. The bride asked us not to film the support team. Support team. That was what I was now. Not sister. Not family. Just support. I nodded once. It's fine. He walked back toward the entrance, shoulders tense like he knew something about that moment wasn't right. But he had a job. Just like everyone else here. Everyone was following a list. And my name wasn't on it. I opened Instagram again. The wedding page had just posted a new carousel. Sunlight through champagne glasses. Handwritten vows. Clarice laughing beside Russell at the rehearsal dinner. I tried tagging Deline. User not found. I blinked, confused. Checked her profile. Gone. No posts. No bio. Nothing. Blocked. I didn't realize I had been holding my breath until it forced its way out of my chest. I searched the hashtag, Deline and Malcolm say I do. Hundreds of posts. Stories. Clips. Not a single frame with me in it. Not even by accident. I switched to Facebook. Clarice's profile was public, carefully curated, every post centered around Deline. Photos. Captions. Memories arranged like a display. In one picture, Russell stood between Deline and Clarice, both smiling brightly. The three who made this day possible. No mention of me. I scrolled quietly, not interacting, just watching. The way you look through a store window, knowing nothing inside belongs to you. The crunch of gravel pulled me out of it. A voice followed, low, familiar. Hey, they said check-in was here. I looked up. Mason. He held a simple boutonniere in one hand and an envelope in the other. My envelope. I had written it weeks ago. Inside a note. Wear this. Meet me at the back garden. Thank you for not letting me disappear. I hadn't expected him to actually come, but he did. A security guard stepped in front of him. You're not on the guest list. I'm here with Fiona, Mason said calmly. The guard frowned. There's no Fiona registered in the guest here. I was invited personally. Mason replied. Sorry. If your name isn't on the list, I can't let you in. I stepped forward quickly. It's fine, I said, my voice steady. He's with me. The guard glanced at me, then shrugged. Mason looked at me carefully. You okay? I nodded. Yeah. Go ahead. I'll text you. You sure? Yeah, I said again, even though it wasn't true. He stayed for a second longer, like he wanted to say more. But I stepped back before he could. And then I watched him walk away, back toward his rental car. The boutonniere still in his hand. No argument. No scene. Just quiet disappointment. When his taillights disappeared down the gravel path, I sat on the edge of the wooden bench near the parking cones. My hands rested in my lap, motionless. The sting wasn't sharp. It was slow, numbing. I wasn't just unwelcome. I was edited out. No space at the table, no face in the feed, no voice in the room. My body was here, but the version of me that belonged to this family, she had been erased a long time ago. Today just confirmed it. I sat in that silence for a long time, watching shadows lengthen across the grass. Guests moved in pairs, sipping rosé, laughing under paper lanterns. I stayed where I was, just beyond the view of the lens. My phone buzzed again. A text from Mason. "They don't deserve you, but I'll wait nearby just in case." I stared at the words. I didn't reply. A glass shattered somewhere near the patio. A chorus of claps followed. More laughter, more joy that didn't include me. And then a microphone clicked on inside. Clarissa's voice followed. The sound system wasn't perfect, but Clarissa's voice cut through like polished glass. "And now," she said, her tone syrupy and precise, "a toast to the reason we're all here today." I stood a few steps away from the patio doors. I could see the guests raising their glasses, heads tilted with polite expectancy. "Delphine has always been our sunshine," Clarisse continued, "our golden girl, the one who knew what she wanted even before she could spell it. She lights up every room she walks into." They clinked their flutes and smiled like they'd rehearsed it. I waited. Just one line, one syllable, something. Instead, Clarisse added with a playful smirk, "Some families get one perfect child. We got lucky. We got Delphine." The laughter was instant, light, carefree, like someone had made a harmless joke about a favorite dessert. But I didn't laugh. I didn't even blink, because it wasn't just a punchline. It was a scalpel. My phone slipped deeper into my back pocket. I crossed my arms and leaned against the stucco column by the patio stairs. A waiter passed without seeing me. A breeze lifted the edge of my staff shirt. Still scratchy, still not mine. That toast didn't hurt because it was surprising. It hurt because it wasn't. 2 weeks earlier, I'd stopped by Clarissa's house, a quiet Sunday. I wasn't invited. I just showed up with a small velvet box and a handmade bracelet inside. Nothing extravagant, just a thoughtful something blue crafted with stones I knew Delphine liked. Because even when she didn't like me, I still remembered what she loved. Clarisse opened the door just enough to see me. Her lips tightened. Delphine stood behind her, arms crossed, eyes already rolling. "Mom," I said, "I just wanted to wish her well." Clarisse didn't open the door wider, didn't invite me in. She didn't even glance down at the box in my hands. Instead, she looked over her shoulder at Delphine, then turned back to me and said, "You don't get to do this anymore." "I'm not trying to cause trouble," I said softly. "You're not part of this," she interrupted, calm, sharp, like she was canceling a subscription. "I'm your daughter," I said. I didn't mean for it to come out like that, like a plea. Clarissa's expression didn't shift. "No, I have one daughter, the one getting married." She didn't whisper it. She didn't flinch. She just closed the door slowly, like she was hanging up a phone. Delphine didn't say a word, but she smiled, and that smile has stayed with me. It's strange, the things that stick, moments that harden in your chest like stones. Not the big betrayals, but the small confirmations, the ones you knew were coming. I'd buried that moment, tried to rationalize it. She was stressed. Weddings make people weird. Maybe she didn't mean it like that. But now, hearing her toast echo over clinking glasses, her laughter dancing with the crowds, I knew better. This wasn't about stress. This was a pattern. Years ago, when I got my scholarship letter for pre-med, I'd shown it to her with shaking hands. She'd nodded, barely lifting her eyes from the stove, and said, "That's nice, dear." When Delphine placed third in a spelling bee, Clarisse threw a brunch, had a banner printed. Words matter, and so does Delphine. My whole life had been an exercise in shrinking. Less attention, less fuss, less room to ask for more. But today wasn't just another day of being overlooked. Today was the day she told the world I didn't exist.
The sky was shifting to amber as the afternoon edged closer to dusk. Guests started drifting toward the buffet, the small talk getting louder with wine. I walked away from the main entrance, trying to stay out of frame, out of reach. I passed a group of women near the garden hedge. One of them, maybe a cousin's plus one, whispered a little too loudly, Wait, is that the bride's sister? A second voice answered, No, I think she's adopted or something. They never talk about her. They didn't even lower their voices. I stopped behind a tree. My fingers curled into fists, not out of rage, but something slower, denser. Grief, the kind that doesn't rush out. It settles. The gravel beneath my feet crunched as I turned around and headed back toward the parking lot. I couldn't be seen pacing. Staff wasn't supposed to linger where guests could see them idle. Not that I was truly staff or family or anything. I didn't notice the woman at first. She was already halfway across the lot, striding straight toward me in low heels and a silver wrap. Her hair was the color of frost, elegant, pinned back with minimal effort. Her posture made it clear she wasn't here to socialize. She stopped a few feet away. Her voice was low but unmistakably firm. You don't look like someone who belongs in a parking lot. I blinked, unsure if she was joking or scolding me. Then I realized who she was. Malcolm's mother, Vera. And whatever she was about to say, it wasn't small talk. Vera didn't look away. She just held my gaze like she was checking for something. Damage, maybe, or whatever was left underneath it. Then she reached into the pocket of her wrap and pulled out a cold bottle of water. The condensation slipped down her fingers as she extended it toward me. Take it, she said. Hydration is survival out here. I took the bottle, more out of surprise than need. The water cooled my hand instantly. I hadn't realized how dry my throat was. You're her sister? She asked, voice level but curious. Yeah, I answered. She raised a single brow, the movement subtle. Strange. Everyone inside pretends you don't exist. I gave a dry laugh, more breath than sound. I'm not their pride, I murmured. I'm the part they don't brag about. Vera didn't flinch. She looked at me the way a doctor might study a bruise, measuring depth, cause, and the likelihood of healing. They'll regret that, she said softly. For a few seconds, I forgot where we were. The venue, the wedding, the invisible uniform I was sweating through. It was the first time all day someone looked at me without squinting, like I was out of place. Vera wasn't offering sympathy. She was offering recognition. I almost didn't hear the footsteps approaching. A woman in crisp flats and a headset appeared, clipboard in hand, smiling like she practiced in a mirror. Hi, are you Fiona? She chirped. I turned slowly. Depends on who's asking. I'm with the coordination team, she said, glancing briefly at Vera, then back to me. Clarice asked me to get your signature, just a formality. She handed me the clipboard. A neatly typed sheet sat on top with bolded headers. Volunteer and staff liability waiver. 0 media clause. I skimmed the bullet points. No social media posting of any kind. No speaking to guests or press about internal matters. No presence in photo, video documentation. No disruption or interference with scheduled programming. I looked up at her. Is this normal for parking attendants? She smiled again. It's just to prevent confusion. You're not on the guest list, so it's standard practice. Standard practice to silence someone? I turned the page over. Blank. No addendum, no explanation. Just a line for my signature. It's meant to protect the couple, she added quickly. You know, from any misinterpretation or drama. This is to keep me quiet, I said flat. She didn't argue, just smiled wider. Clarice said you'd understand. That name did it. Clarice. My mother had found yet another way to erase me, legally this time. I didn't sign. I didn't tear it up either. I folded the form in half and slid it into my back pocket.
I wasn't sure why I kept it. Instinct, maybe, or spite. The woman's smile twitched. She gave a little nod and walked off. I leaned against the nearest car, the heat from the hood seeping through my jeans. The bottle of water sat unopened beside me. If I signed that paper, I'd be everything they said I was. Quiet, easy, not existent. If I refused, I'd be the troublemaker, the angry one, the bitter sibling who ruined a wedding. It was a trap, and the walls were made of polite smiles and perfect lighting. I stared out toward the guests, drifting between the lawn and cocktail tables. I imagined the stories already forming in their heads. She always kept to herself. She was probably jealous. Some people just don't know how to be happy for others. They didn't know a damn thing. But the thing that simmered most wasn't sadness anymore. It was precision. Like a blade finally being sharpened after years of being dulled on purpose. I felt Vera's eyes on me again. She had drifted a few steps away, but before she reached the main hall, she turned back. Her voice was clear. Keep that form, she said. You may need it, not to sign, but to show. And with that, she walked inside.
I stood alone again, but this time the quiet didn't sting. It buzzed like electricity before a storm. Somewhere inside, a server dropped a tray, and people gasped. But Malcolm wasn't paying attention to the spill. He was staring at an email on his phone, an email not meant for him. The tray crashed near the orders table and everyone gasped, but not Malcolm. He stood near the window, one hand wrapped around his phone, the other tucked into his jacket pocket. His posture had shifted, subtle but unmistakable. The slack in his shoulders was gone. He wasn't watching the mess. He was reading something serious. Inside the glowing screen was an email that had slipped through the cracks, a forgotten forwarding rule from an old shared inbox during the early days of their wedding planning. He recognized the sender instantly. Law Office of Nancy J. Conincade. Subject: Next steps, marriage asset consolidation. The email was addressed to Deadline. Lines stood out like sirens. Proceed with final stage 30 days post-merger. Once marital assets are integrated, execute quietly. He'll never suspect if you keep smiling. Malcolm didn't say a word. He didn't storm out, didn't demand an explanation. Instead, he slid the phone into his pocket and scanned the room. When his eyes landed on Vera, something passed between them. A nod, barely there. He crossed the floor and whispered, "We were right." Vera didn't ask. She just pressed her lips together and answered, "Get the prenup." He turned on his heel and walked straight toward the coordinator's tent. Back outside, I hadn't moved from my spot near the parking loop, but I felt it. The air was different, more electric, like a curtain was about to drop, and no one inside had rehearsed what came next. I didn't know what Vera had seen or what Malcolm had read, but I knew when the atmosphere changed, and it had changed. 3 days earlier, Vera had called me late at night. Her voice was calm, but there was steel behind it. "Have you ever wondered why Deadline always knows where Malcolm is?" I had laughed bitterly. Deadline doesn't trust shadows. She checks the locks twice. Vera replied, "He gave her his laptop password last year. I told him to change it. He didn't." That afternoon, Malcolm ran a security scan just in case. And what he found wasn't just spyware. It was remote access software installed months ago, hidden under an old event planning tool Deadline tasked him to try. The app had permissions to track keystrokes, screenshots, even location pings. He hadn't told anyone, not even Vera, not until today. Now, watching him disappear into the reception tent, I knew that line had finally snapped. Across the garden path, Vera reappeared with a folded slip of paper in her hand. She walked straight toward me. No pretense. "This landed in my inbox yesterday," she said, holding it out. Same law firm, same language, wrong address. I unfolded the printout. It was another email thread, different timestamp, but unmistakably familiar. Deadline had sent instructions to the lawyer requesting clarification on Malcolm's asset categories. Her tone was professional, cold, calculating. "They're playing all of us," Vera said quietly, "but I think it's time we played back." My chest tightened. Not from fear, from clarity. This wasn't paranoia. This wasn't rivalry. This was strategy. And I had just been drafted to the other side. I slipped the paper into the same pocket where the waiver form still sat. We didn't hug. We didn't speak again. She just nodded once and walked back inside. Moments later, I saw Clarice. She was near the rose fountain, flanked by the wedding planner and one of the venue staff. They were whispering, glancing toward me like I'd grown a second head. Clarice's expression had shifted for the first time all day. Worry. She motioned toward the planner, said something clipped, and turned her gaze toward me. I didn't look away. Not this time. I just held her stare. Her mouth tightened. Her hands fidgeted with the pearls at her collar. For the first time, she wasn't in control. Then, near the bar, Malcolm reappeared. He spoke briefly to a staffer, then placed both hands on the counter and ordered a whiskey. No garnish, no ice, just poured straight. A moment later, my phone buzzed. One word. Tonight. I exhaled slowly, because the plan wasn't revenge. It was exposure. I could feel it in my spine. The shift, the beginning of the unraveling. A breeze had picked up, cooling the sweat behind my knees as I stood near the parking loop. The sun was lower now, everything cast in gold. Even the lies. That's when it happened. A woman in a silky blush dress and oversized hat teetered her way toward me on glittery wedges, holding a half-empty champagne flute. She squinted at me. "Oh, good valet," she slurred, dangling her car keys like bait. "Can you bring the Lexus around? The gray one with the little hula dancer on the dash?" I blinked. I was still in the black event staff t-shirt. Clarice insisted I wear. My hair was pulled back in a way that made me look more like someone's assistant than someone's sister. The woman pulled a $5 bill from her clutch and held it out. "Bless your heart. Weddings are brutal, huh?" I stared at the cash, then at her, and then I dropped the bill into the nearest trash can without saying a word. Her jaw fell open, but I had already turned away. I pulled my phone from my back pocket and tapped into the thread Vera had forwarded me earlier. My finger scrolled slowly, careful not to miss anything. It was Delphi's message to her lawyer. We'll sign the prenup to shut Vera up, then void it quietly after the merger. Malcolm won't even notice. He's too busy playing the good guy. A cold chill settled over me. They hadn't just humiliated me. They were about to defraud a man in front of 200 witnesses, and smile while doing it. I looked down at my outfit one more time. Then I walked to my car, threw open the back door, and yanked out the outfit I'd worn earlier. My navy jumpsuit, simple jewelry, low heels. I changed behind the car, tucked my hair into a twist, and applied lipstick in the mirror of my visor. When I looked up, I didn't see the help anymore. I saw someone who knew too much and had nothing left to lose. I'm not your valet, I muttered under my breath, and I'm done playing nice. I walked back up the gravel path, past the archway wrapped in fake peonies, toward the main reception tent. As soon as I stepped onto the stone porch, I felt it, the eyes. A few servers froze mid-step. The wedding planner whispered urgently into her earpiece. A security guard shifted in place. Clarice was standing near the fountain, chatting with a family friend. When she spotted me, her smile flickered like a bad signal. She walked fast, intercepting me near the guestbook table. "What do you think you're doing?" she hissed under her breath, keeping her expression tight for the surrounding guests. I pulled out the folded waiver from my pocket and held it up. "Relax," I said calmly. "I didn't sign it."
Her hand twitched. "You were told to stay outside." "I was told a lot of things," I replied, stepping past her, "but this one's my decision." She reached for my arm, but I'd already moved on. Inside, the music was softer, slow jazz humming through the air. Chandeliers sparkled like they didn't know the ceiling was about to fall in. People turned, some whispered. Then Delaline saw me. She froze mid-laugh, her champagne glass pausing an inch from her mouth. Our eyes locked. She blinked like I was a ghost, a glitch in the simulation. I walked toward the bar. Malcolm was there, drink in hand, speaking low to Vera. She looked up and nodded at me once, quick and certain. "It's time," she said. The planner noticed us then, hovering too close for coincidence. I turned to her and smiled. "Do me a favor," I said. "You might want to record this part." Malcolm stood tall, adjusted his tie, and stepped onto the stage meant for toasts. He raised his hand once, and the band stopped mid-chord. Forks dropped, glasses paused, conversations died mid-sentence. He cleared his throat. "Before dinner, I need to say something." Delaline smiled tightly, walking toward him, but he didn't look at her. He looked out into the crowd. "About who I am and who I'm marrying." And in that moment, just for a second, her smile cracked. The air didn't shift. It cracked. Delaline's expression twitched, the edges of her mouth faltering as Malcolm's words echoed across the ballroom. There was a hesitation in the crowd, like a group inhale, waiting to exhale. Malcolm stepped forward, the mic firm in his hand. His voice didn't waver. "Before we begin dinner, I think we all deserve honesty." He reached into the inside pocket of his suit jacket and pulled out a neatly folded document. My chest tightened. I already knew what it was. Vera had shown it to me hours earlier. "This is a prenup agreement we were both meant to honor," Malcolm said. He looked directly at Delaline, but she sent instructions to her attorney to void it. 30 days after this wedding, after our assets merged. A gasp rippled through the room. Somewhere in the back, a fork clattered against a plate. Delaline blinked, her eyes darting toward the exit, then back to Malcolm. She opened her mouth but said nothing. He unfolded the paper, lifted it high enough for the crowd to see. "Would you like to read it, Delphine?" he asked, offering it toward her. "Since you wrote it." She didn't move. I watched her face, how it searched the room for someone to rescue her. But this time, no one came. Clarice, of course, did what Clarice always did. She moved quickly, stepping forward in heels that struck the marble floor too loud, too sharp. "That's enough," she snapped. "You're humiliating her. You're ruining her wedding." Malcolm turned his eyes on her. Calm steel. She did that when she lied. Clarice's head snapped toward me, venom already coating her voice. "You've poisoned this family. You've always been bitter, a troublemaker." And that's when I heard him. No, it wasn't a shout. It was firmer, like a stone dropped in a still lake. Everyone turned. "Russell," my father. He stepped into the light slowly, his posture straighter than I remembered, his voice clearer than I'd ever heard. "She didn't ruin this family," he said. "We did." The room stilled again, breathless. Clarice stared at him, a gasp. "You're siding with her?" He shook his head. "I'm not siding. I'm confessing." He turned to face the crowd. Our family, their friends,
All the strangers who came for champagne and floral centerpieces and fairy tale lies. For years, we looked the other way. Every time Clarice played favorites, every time Delaline twisted things, we let it happen. His voice broke slightly, but he continued. Fiona wasn't a problem. She was inconvenient. And we failed her. I didn't know I was crying until I tasted salt. Delaline tried to recover. She stepped forward, holding out her hands like a magician trying to recapture a spell gone wrong. They're making this up, she said. This is fake, all of it. But then Vera stepped forward, measured, composed, then explained the email. The surveillance software you installed on Malcolm's devices, the prenup language that matches your own drafts. She raised an eyebrow. And the hard drive we found in the bridal suite closet, hidden behind a bouquet box. Want to explain that too? Delphine's mouth opened, then closed.
Fiona, the shadow, the background noise, the one in black by the cars, was now at the center of the room. And for once, Delphine had no script to steal the spotlight back. She let out a strangled breath. Then she did what she always did when things didn't go her way. She bolted. The mic slipped from her hand, crashing to the ground with a screech of feedback. She stormed toward the doors, but her dress snagged on the leg of the chair and tore near the hemline. A sharp rip, a stunned silence, followed by gasps. No one followed her, at least not yet. Clarice stood frozen. Her eyes flicked to me, not with fury this time, but something else. Recognition. For the first time, she looked at me and didn't see a problem to manage. She saw a reckoning. Then she turned, gathering the folds of her shawl around her, and followed her golden daughter out the ballroom doors. The music didn't start back up. Nobody toasted, and no one dared pretend it was still a wedding. The doors hadn't even closed behind Clarice when the shift began. It wasn't loud. No shouts, no slammed glasses, just the air thinning. Conversations dropped off like someone had pulled a plug. It was the kind of silence you don't notice at first, until it's everywhere. People started to stand. One by one, guests tucked away napkins, glanced toward the exits, murmured to spouses. The hum of a ruined evening filled the space like low static. The ballroom, once glowing and packed, now emptied like a tide pulling back. There was no dinner, no champagne towers, no photo booth line, no bouquet toss. The music had died hours early, and so had the fairy tale. Malcolm sat at the sweetheart table alone, his tie loosened, a drink untouched beside him. Vera moved calmly around the venue staff, quietly, giving instructions, making sure the cleanup started gently, without the sound of defeat. My phone buzzed. A message from Clarice. Come to the side hall, let's talk. No apology, no context, just a command, dressed as an invitation. I read it once, then pressed and held the screen. Delete conversation? The phone asked. Yes, because for the first time, I didn't feel like explaining myself anymore. I didn't feel like being summoned, and I sure as hell didn't feel like being managed. Instead, I walked over to Vera, who stood beside the dessert table that hadn't even been uncovered. She looked up from a checklist and offered me a quiet smile. I pulled the folded document from my pocket, the waiver, still unsigned, still blank. I handed it to her. She took it gently, as if handling evidence. This, she said, snapping a photo with her phone, this is what we call intimidation. But now, she looked up at me, sharp and certain. Now it's a receipt. She tucked the paper into her clutch. I've got lawyers and a few friends who owe me favors and places where scandals don't go unnoticed. I didn't ask what she meant. I just knew that for once, I wasn't the one being erased. I took a deep breath and turned away. The reception hall had dimmed slightly, as if even the chandeliers were tired. I walked through the space slowly, the echo of my heels tapping softly against the polished floor. A few guests lingered in clusters, whispering. Some looked at me with discomfort, some with pity, a few with respect. I didn't return any glances, didn't wave, didn't flinch. Clarice was nowhere in sight, Delphine either, and I didn't care. I'd spoken without shouting, stood up without a mic, told the truth without ever raising my voice. I passed the table where I once would have sat. White linen, untouched silverware, a name card that never had my name, and I kept walking. As I neared the exit, someone was waiting. Russell. He didn't say a word. He didn't try to hug me or apologize or ask for forgiveness wrapped in excuses. Instead, he held out his phone. A photo on the screen.
2 little girls, one in a glittery store-bought princess dress, the other in a crooked homemade dragon costume, half slipping off one shoulder. Me. I looked at him.
His eyes were glassy, his face tired, but he gave a single nod. That was all. I stepped past him out the ballroom, out of the story they'd written for me. Outside, the air had cooled. Dusk had turned a full night, and the fairy lights twinkled over the courtyard like nothing had happened, like the night hadn't shattered. Mason's car was already waiting. He didn't step out, didn't open the door. He just waited. I slid in beside him, shutting the door behind me. He glanced at me, didn't ask. I exhaled, long, deep, like air I'd been holding for years finally left my lungs. We didn't speak. He just drove. And for once, I wasn't walking away. I was walking out. By the time we reached the city line, the car ride had settled into a calm kind of quiet, the kind you don't rush to fill. Mason didn't ask where I wanted to go. He just drove, as if the answer wasn't a destination, but a feeling. We stopped for drive-through milkshakes at a place we used to love back in college. Chocolate for him, strawberry for me. Something about that felt like reclamation. Not nostalgia exactly, more like a gentle reminder. Not all endings taste bitter. The next morning, I woke to the sun breaking through thin curtains in Mason's guest room. For the first time in years, I didn't check my phone before stretching. When I did, though, headlines were already waiting. Charleston heiress's wedding implodes amid legal league. Prenup scandal rocks Southern society circle. Screenshots of Delphine's emails had hit a few forums overnight. I didn't post them, neither did Vera, but someone had. Someone with access and apparently a conscience. Her Instagram went dark. No stories, no reels, just silence where there used to be branded joy. The comments under her last bridal glam post were ruthless. So that's why the cake never got cut. I knew something was shady. Girl gave networking, not love. Lawsuit pending energy. Yikes. She wasn't canceled exactly, but the glow gone. Malcolm filed for annulment the following Monday. Vera, quiet as ever, made no statement that she did make a donation to a women's legal advocacy center in Charleston in my name. I didn't ask for that, but I didn't return it either. Clarice, on the other hand, disappeared offline completely. Her Facebook scrubbed clean of anything tagged wedding. No new posts, no profile pic, just one voicemail on my phone. I know I failed. I don't know how to fix that. No plea, no tears. Still, I didn't reply. I didn't block her either, but I wasn't ready to hand her my peace wrapped in forgiveness she hadn't earned. Some silences are less about anger and more about boundaries. Back in Atlanta, I started small. Took on a freelance gig helping a local nonprofit restructure their operations. Nothing flashy, but it felt good to be useful again on my terms. I started jogging again, just a mile or two in the early morning. It helped clear the thoughts that still clung some days, the weight of old patterns, the echoes of a family that always made me feel like background noise. I bought a necklace, not for show, not to match anything, just a thin silver chain with a small F charm, a name I didn't need anyone else to validate. I never rewatched the wedding video, didn't need to. Sometimes closure isn't about tying the bow. It's about walking away from the box altogether. Weeks later, I got mail, a small white envelope. No return address, but the handwriting made my chest tighten. Inside was a photo. 2 little girls side by side in a driveway. One wore a glittery costume from a catalog.
The other wore a lopsided dragon tail made of old towels and duct tape. Me. Tucked behind the photo was a note. Just 3 lines. I should have made you both feel seen. You were never invisible to me. Dad. I didn't cry, but I kept the photo. Not for me's sake, but to remind myself that even flawed people sometimes find their voice, even if it comes late. Now, most evenings I sit out on the porch of the duplex I rent. It's nothing fancy. The wood creaks in the wrong spots, but it's mine. Quiet, chosen. Tonight, I sipped mint tea as the last of the light melted behind the trees. Mason called from inside. You okay out there? I smiled into the dusk. I'm not okay, I called back, voice steady. I'm something better. I looked at the horizon, let the quiet settle around me like armor I'd finally earned. Then softly to no one but myself, I whispered, I choose me. Before you scroll past, I want to say something I wish someone had said to me a long time ago. If you've ever felt like the outsider in your own family, if you've ever sat quietly in a room full of people who were supposed to love you and still felt like a stranger, this is for you. You are not alone. You are not invisible, and you are not required to keep shrinking yourself to fit into a space that was never made to hold all of you. Too often we're taught that keeping the peace means keeping quiet,
that being the bigger person means swallowing hurt, ignoring disrespect, or pretending things don't cut as deep as they do. But here's the truth. Peace that costs your voice, your worth, your identity, that's not peace. That's silence disguised as survival. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do isn't leaving. It's choosing to walk away with your head high, without bitterness, without begging, and without needing anyone's approval. Choosing peace over permission, dignity over validation, yourself over the version of you they expect. It took me 37 years to stop waiting for someone to pick me, to stop bending backwards hoping someone would see my value. And the day I finally chose myself, that day changed everything. Was it easy? No. But was it worth it? Every damn bit. You may never get the apology you deserve. You may never hear the words you've been aching to hear since you were a kid. That doesn't make your pain any less real, and it sure doesn't make your healing any less valid. So let me ask you something straight up. Have you ever kept your mouth shut to keep the peace, even though it tore you up inside? Have you ever played small just to avoid making others uncomfortable? And if so, are you ready to stop doing that? I'd love to hear your story. Whether it's messy, raw, unfinished, none of that disqualifies it. We don't heal by hiding. We heal by speaking, by sharing, by knowing we're not the only ones. If this hit something in you, if it stirred up a truth you've been afraid to say, drop a 1 in the comments or let me know where you're watching from. If it didn't land, that's okay too. I want to hear from you anyway. Tell me what felt off. Let's talk. Let's learn. No judgment here. And if you're in that in-between space, halfway between silence and standing up, I see you. I've been there. You are not too late. You are not too much. And you are not alone. If you want more conversations that tell the truth, that go beneath the surface, that remind us we're all still trying to figure it out, subscribe, stick around. Your voice matters here. Your story matters. You matter. I'll see you in the next.